everybody, and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. Today we have some major announcements to talk about. Over the weekend, ByBit was hacked and saw over $5 billion total of outflows. Is this the next black swan in our cycle before we see a massive drop in the price? Or is this just a short-term shakeout before we go much higher from here? I'm going to be jumping into not only the stock market, not only Bitcoin, but finishing up with the altcoin charts as well, because this is such an important time in our cycle. We're in the final year of our bull run. We all know that this is the final year to make it big. So I have the most important charts today to talk about so that we can be positioned and prepared to capitalize on all of this volatility ahead. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you guys find any value in this video, please do me a favor, hit that like, comment, and subscribe button. And without further ado, let's jump right into this amazing video today. So right off the bat, we're going to get right into the most important aspect of this video, and that is talking about the recent hack around ByBit. For you guys that aren't aware, last weekend we just saw ByBit, the biggest perpetual exchange for trading futures, for trading any sort of leverage positions. They see more volume than any of the other exchanges inside of that niche. They got hacked for over $1.5 billion, and we actually saw over $4 billion in a bank run. So if we come down here, ByBit experienced a $1.5 billion hack and over $4 billion of a bank run, leading to a total of $5.5 billion of outflows within the exchange. The ByBit CEO, Ben Zhao, addressed the incident, highlighting the need for loan coverage, user support, and the impact of a temporary shutdown of the Safe Wallet functionalities. The Safe Wallet is basically a third-party custodial exchange that they use. It's decentralized. It's the way that many of these other exchanges ultimately store their assets in cold storage, and they ultimately use the Safe Wallet. And so right now, everybody's kind of wondering, was this compromised because of some local team member's computer or something that they had, a virus, whatever it could be, or is this actually an issue on the Safe Wallet functionalities? And that's the big question. So Safe Wallet's actually gone. They've turned off some of their features just to be safe. They haven't actually confirmed if they can see anything on their side. As of now, it isn't anything on the Safe Wallet side. It will probably be something along the actual ByBit team and something that happened inside of one of their computers, whatever it is that allowed this hack to take place. Now, the group that actually hacked, and we can confirm this based off of ZachXBT's findings, major cryptocurrency exchange ByBit has seen a total outflows of $5.5 billion after it suffered a near $1.5 billion hack that saw hackers believed to be from North Korea's Lazarus group drained its cold wallet. So that's the big thing that we're watching for. It is believed, and ZachXBT has actually tracked a number of these wallets. They line up with the North Korean hackers of the Lazarus group, and this appears to be by far their biggest hack yet. But these guys have already hacked billions and billions of dollars worth of the market, and this is something that is, where everybody's just continuing to watch for, considering these guys have been around for a while, and this is not the first go around that they've actually had hacking inside of a market. On top of that, some of the other news that's a little bit more positive at the end of the day, the SEC Enforced Division closes investigation into Robinhood Crypto. Now, over the last couple years, we've seen the SEC going extensively after any crypto or any company that is trying to collaborate with crypto. Robinhood was trying to build, they were trying to add a lot of crypto support throughout the bear market and even in the beginning of our cycle of 2023. But the SEC ultimately opened a lawsuit, and then that stifled any of their, growth that they were trying to do in the crypto spaces. So having the SEC actually coming through, shutting down this suit, this is really a bullish thing for crypto as a whole, because now the institutions from the normal stock trading world can now kind of step into crypto, and they don't have to worry so much about all of these legalities. So I think that this is a very bullish thing, and there's been a number of SEC lawsuits that have been dropped recently. Coinbase recently had one as well. So all of the big lawsuits that we've been watching for are kind of getting dropped as Trump's taken office, as we're seeing this new team kind of taking shape inside of the White House. I think this is a very bullish sign, even though, we obviously just went through that $1.5 billion hack. The good news with the hack is that all assets were covered. They did have to start taking out loans just to be able to back some of those reserves, but all of their reserves were already backed. The issue was they didn't want to mess with any of their wallets. They didn't know if maybe they were compromised as well. So when they found out that their ETH was being stolen, they ultimately just kind of shut down things, and then they're kind of just waiting to see what takes place. But they were getting loans, they covered all deposits. As everybody withdrew the $4.5 billion of $5.5 total, we ended up seeing them, easily cover all deposits. So there wasn't an FTX type of situation here. It wasn't like, everybody rushed to the exits and there was no more exit liquidity to go around, so nobody could withdraw their funds. They had the funds to cover everybody's deposits, and everything is okay from this point. However, when we come over here and take a look at the Bitcoin price, we can see that we are still kind of chopping inside of this short-term range. Coming in here, the opening market did see this big pullback. The market is bouncing in the short term, but we're going to watch and see, guys. We've been chopping inside of this range for the last couple months, and we haven't really moved at all. So in the last couple months, we've basically maintained this range between 90K and pretty much 100K, and we've ping-ponged back and forth in here the entire time. At this point, nothing has changed. What I like to do is zoom out. When we're looking at the same range and nothing changing over the course of months and months, the best thing we can do is just zoom out and take a look at the trend. What we know is that we have reacted off of this horizontal support over 10 different times, right? A number of different times that we've reacted off this level. Even though we're kind of chopping around here at this a little bit above this primary horizontal support, keep in mind that if we were to lose where we're at right now, lose this 94, 95K region, the next support is basically just going to be right back down to this same one that we've been holding. So a lot of people are really freaking out, but the thing I've noticed is oftentimes whenever Bitcoin starts to create some type of a range and it chops people out, that's where most people are going to get, ultimately chopped out. They're going to get liquidated. They're not going to have the amount of capital to continue to push forward into these cycles. And so most people are going to cost themselves their portfolio just in this time where Bitcoin is just bouncing in between a small, little price range. So as we're looking at the price of Bitcoin, I think it's very much important that as Bitcoin is just kind of chopping around here, it's chopping a lot of people out. You don't really want to be looking to do too many trades. Just simply play the range. If Bitcoin is to fall back down to this horizontal support, I think that's a great opportunity to buy, considering every time we've hit this level, we have produced a bounce. So if you're looking for longs, ultimately the long should be back down here at support. And then if you're looking at, where to take your profits on those longs, I think targeting the range highs back here at about 108,000 and even a little bit lower, I'd probably target about 104,000 to 108,000. I think the best strategy to do is Bitcoin's just ranging back and forth is just buy the levels where we can see obvious support and then look to just take profits when we range back up into this resistance. Every time we've rallied back up into these resistance levels, we've produced some type of a short-term top. So every time we've hit any of these levels, it's been a great opportunity to take profit. Anytime we've bounced off of this support, it's a great opportunity to open longs. So until the range is broken, this is the way that we need to be playing this market. And there's no reason to complicate it. I think at the most bearish scenario that we're looking for with Bitcoin is that we make one big kind of shakeout here. Maybe we come back down to this primary range at about 89 to 90K. Maybe we bounce up here a little bit, but I'm not going to be surprised if we see one big final shakeout. The bearish scenario to me would basically be this, where we kind of lose this primary support that we've been holding, and then we make a lower low back down to kind of what we were at when we first started breaking out. Because if you guys remember, this was our prior range high. When we first broke out, this was kind of the first pullback level that we experienced. So I'm not going to be surprised if Bitcoin decides to make a little bit of a deeper pullback in here. If we end up coming back down and retesting that same level one final time before this thing finally starts to reverse and goes into its next cycle. Those are the two scenarios that I see, and it's a really straightforward approach. Considering anytime Bitcoin's ranging, we know it's only going to do a couple things. It's either going to bounce on the same support that it's been holding, or there is always that one potential where you see that kind of shakeout and that flush of the range one final time before it reverses. I see these two scenarios as being my likely candidates for what's going to take place for Bitcoin. However, I don't think that either of these change the bigger picture of us going up into a brand new all-time high. Keep in mind that this is the first true breakout into price discovery. So yeah, we are chopping, and there is a lot of altcoins getting wrecked in this time, but keep in mind that regardless of this consolidation, I believe that this points us towards going into a next big push to 150K per Bitcoin. So that's the big thing we need to be aware of. And we need to be aware also of the stock market, because in my opinion, if we're going to see a big sell-off in the stock market, that's going to give us that idea that Bitcoin could actually flush the range low and make a bigger sell-off. For example, if we were to see Bitcoin kind of make that flush and come back down like that, clear the range low one final time, I'm not going to be surprised if the stock market, being the S&P 500, finally makes a little bit of a pullback from some of this bearish divergence that we've had. I'm on a weekly time frame, and basically since July of 2024, Bitcoin or the stock market has maintained bearish divergence where we have lower highs and lower lows on the RSI, and we also have the same on the MACD, and the MACD just did technically break down again. So we even got confirmation in the MACD in the shorter time frames. So with that being said, guys, if we're looking at the stock market, keep in mind that we always know that the stock market can stay overbought or oversold for given periods of time. This thing could make one more high right here, and this thing could still just make a lower high right in here like that. That is something that can most definitely happen. We have to be aware of that. However, when we are looking at a weekly time frame, and for the last 6 months plus, we've had nothing but bearish divergence, lower highs on the RSI and the MACD. I'm not going to be surprised if we are due for kind of one more final, shakeout before we start going back up. Just another one of these little pullbacks that we end up seeing. It doesn't have to be quite as big as what I have drawn here, but just don't be surprised if this market were to make some type of a pullback before we make that next big push into new all-time highs again. Keep in mind, guys, that the last time we had any sort of meaningful bearish divergence like this on the RSI was, pretty much right over in here before our cycle top at the very ending of 2020 when we, stopped the quantitative easing. We were kind of in a similar point here where we weren't really doing a hell of a lot, even though the price was making these massive moves. A lot of the RSI was just kind of topping out at this point, right? High, 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 higher high, higher high, higher high. So just don't be surprised if what we see right in here is the early warning that we could see one more kind of shakeout before that next push comes. And that's why I say that if we're looking at Bitcoin sitting all the way up here at this range high, if the stock market being the S&P 500 is to make kind of one big flush right here and we do pull back from some of this bearish divergence on the momentum indicators, then don't be surprised if that's actually that flush in Bitcoin that takes us below this range low, right? Because what I was talking about here is maybe we sell off right here, but then we kind of make one big shakeout that kind of tags the very first pullback that we made at our last breakout. I'm not going to be surprised if it's at that level that we finally get that bounce and start going up. We might need to actually flush this range low one time before that reversal can set in. But big picture, it doesn't change anything for me. I don't think that regardless of whatever the stock market does, I don't think that Bitcoin's topped up here. I don't find it likely that it's going to come all the way back down and, pretty much coming all the way into this prior cluster that we were at. I do find it likely that we are moments away from the ending of this correction. The question is it really just going to be us holding this range in the same support that we've bounced off of 10 different times? Or are we going to get one flush below that before we start the bounce? Either of those two scenarios I think are likely, and I don't know which one is going to play out, but I'm just going to watch and see, and it really does revolve around the stock market. If the stock market keeps making higher highs, it keeps bouncing higher, and it invalidates some of this exhaustion, we might not see that big flush in Bitcoin. It might just be more ranging before we start to reverse and go back up. But when I do see a very real potential of a weekly bearish divergence on two indicators at the same time, it is a little bit of a concerning thing, and I do want to bring it to your guys' attention just to be aware of that. Now, last up, we're going to be talking about the altcoins, taking a look at what their price action is showing, and giving you guys a little bit of an idea of what I think can be playing out for here. Now, in my last update, we talked about how we were unable to actually get a breakout of our prior all-time highs, but in the most recent move, that was actually where we tagged that level. Now, keep in mind, we tagged that level twice, and we rejected from that level twice. So it is very obvious that this prior all-time high is a very intense resistance level. Anytime we had this false attempt at a breakout, right, we tagged it once, pulled back, went back up for another attempt and rejected again. That's confirmation that that resistance is just too strong. We're not quite there in our cycle to get that new all-time high in the altcoins. And we ended up seeing that big pullback shortly after with this liquidation event in that big candle. However, I was kind of leaning towards this being the ending of that correction before we kind of bottomed and went back up. But it's looking like we are actually retesting this prior resistance here, and we are actually falling lower, getting that continuation to the downside. So when I'm looking at this chart, now we need to zoom into a shorter time frame. Let's go into the daily, and let's just take a look at what is taking place right now. So if we're looking at this market, we're still just kind of ranging, and we haven't technically broken that range yet, but we're right on that last line of defense, right? So chances are this will end up breaking down unless some miracle happens and Bitcoin ultimately just ends up reversing this entire dip day that it's had today. If that's the case, ultimately this will probably do the same. But if we're going to be looking at this thing losing the support right in here, rejecting and starting that leg lower, I think that we're headed for probably back down to this wick and maybe even a little lower. So the level that I'm watching for this next drop is basically going to be about 750 billion to about 705 billion. I do think that for the altcoins on this next leg lower, they will make themselves all the way back down to basically this first lower high that we had on our last move. And it's at that level that is also going to be lining up with that same range for Bitcoin. Because remember, guys, wrong chart. Remember, when we're looking at this Bitcoin chart, this first sell-off was the very first pullback that Bitcoin made when we started to break out of our last range high. So remember, this was our resistance. Bitcoin broke out of it, and this was the first sell-off that we ever had into price discovery. So it's at this same range that I'm anticipating that Bitcoin, if we're going to flush this range, this is where we're going to bottom at. It's going to be right around this 85K region. So that same level right here for Bitcoin is the exact same level as right here for the altcoins. So I do think that if we're going to see that lower low, the altcoins are going to drag all the way back down to like 700 billion, and it's going to basically be a retest and maybe even a slight lower low from that wick that we just had before, we start that reversion. This is what I anticipate taking place inside of the altcoins. And it really revolves around the level that we're at right now. We are right on support. The candle bodies could not be more flush with our support on the shorter time frames. So assuming we're going to continue to drag lower with Bitcoin, this is going to lose that support. And we do have a pretty decent size drop coming in those altcoins. From where we're at right now, you're looking at about another 16, 17% decrease in price before we find our next support. However, when I zoom out on the larger time frames, regardless of this correction, I still do personally lean towards us finding a support back down in here. And the next breakout coming is the one where we can finally get outside of these prior all-time highs. I do believe that this is the final sell-off that we have in this cycle before true price discovery takes place, and we do enter new all-time highs for the first time in this new bull run for the altcoins. Bitcoin's already done it, but we're lagging. This is really what I am leaning towards, guys, though. I'm going to keep you updated. We got a lot of cool things. I'm going to see how the stock market plays out, whether this divergence plays out or whether this is going to get invalidated on the next breakout. Bitcoin's really revolving around what the stock market does, and I think that we're just going to be watching these ranges because that's the most important thing that the charts are telling us. We don't want to overcomplicate it. We're going to stick to our guns. Anyways, guys, if you did find value in this video, please do me a favor. Hit that like, comment, and subscribe button. If you don't want to miss out on anything I'm actually investing into this market, links are in the description to go ahead and sign up on my website. From there, you can see every single thing I'm buying, selling, trading over the course of our bull markets, because I'm telling you guys right now, 2025 is the year of our super cycle, and now is the time to be positioned, be prepared, and have the good investments ready to go, because once 2025 kicks off and we get true alt season, you don't have much time to wait around. The waiting around is the 3 years that we've been up to at this point to get to that final year of the cycle. So I'm looking forward to trading it. Love to have you guys in the group. Links are in the description. With that being said, I'll catch you guys in the next one. As always, peace out.